Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
In the emergency room, there was the familiar smell of sterile bandages, chlorine, their heat ointments, and something else unknown, but familiar from childhood to every visitor of the hospital. The faded light bulbs were unable to illuminate the long and dark corridor with many branches. Sunlight stubbornly broke through the long, unwashed windows, on which you could barely hear the colored blinds. Once a day, the doctors on duty go around all the wards of their wards, housed in 3-story hospitals. They examine the patients, prescribe treatment, or send them for discharge. Later, a nurse arrives with shots, IVs, and pills. Fulfilling a doctor's appointment on the cold tile round the clock, a piercing silence can be heard. The footsteps of the staff are monotonous for longtime patients and carrying anxiety for new arrivals. The surgery department on the 2nd floor. A world apart. Its own rules, the most skilled doctors, and often the most difficult patients. Every patient has a bright light in his eyes shining with hopes for recovery, especially when the doctor says that the treatment helps or the operation was successful. The modest beds on which the patients lie monotonously make creaking sounds with every movement, reminding neighbors and visitors of the need for peace and restraint. The rays of sunlight penetrate the windows of the months-old wards, giving a sliver of light, hope, and a small portion of freedom and joy. In a world of hospital walls, illness, and trauma. After 5 minutes in the resident, Michael, head of the Department of Surgery, went on his morning rounds of the patients admitted yesterday. He operated on 2 of them the day before. 2 more are awaiting surgery today, and the rest are already on long-term post-operative observation. With each patient, the surgeon finds a moment to talk about distracting topics to lift their spirits just a little bit. Christina, good morning. The doctor is talking to a woman who's about to have her first surgery. So we have a tumor that appears to be bone acid. Tell me, have you had it treated by the good doctor yet? The patient answered, yes, many times, but as you can see, without success. What can they cure in our polyclinic? They said only surgeries now, or it will relapse all the time. Michael, what exactly will you do? We will remove the tumor itself, examining the right arm. The surgeon began to give details. We'll have to remove it along with the skin though. Christina was afraid. I will lose mobility. Where to get new skin I cannot. I have a summer house. How will I work? Calm down. We'll get donor flaps from here. Pointing to the forearm, the doctor continued the story and will cover the resulting tumor removal. You'll be able to work on your daksha in 3 weeks after surgery. Oh, thank you very much. The woman smiled. Do you have someone to help you in your daksha work? Asked the doctor. Yes, of course. My husband died a few years ago. Now my 3 kids help me, especially in things that I would never do myself. And what is it to pick grapes or fund? Betrayed by memories, the woman told me. It was always my husband who did it. I never liked the foundation, so he took care of it himself. And the grapes upstairs I will not climb for no reason. I'm afraid I will not be a pilot and do not jump with a parachute. The doctor laughed. But digging, weeding, and planting flowers you can. Continue to prepare the patient for surgery. Addressed the head of the department to the nurse and continued his rounds. An hour later, the doctor returned to the office, where he entered all patient data into a special program. About 15 minutes later, he received a call inviting him to the operating room, where he was waiting to work on a tumor on his arm. Standing in the operating room, the surgeon washed his hands according to a special scheme. After a double treatment with soap and vet, on dry Michael treated his hands for 4 minutes with an anti-Soviet agent. Turning around, he went to the operating room. Having previously put on a sterile gown and mask, Maria, he turned to the nurse, work the patient, and start the operation. The surgeon carefully makes on around the tumor and begins to separate it from the patient's arm. Doing the painstaking work, he hardly gets distracted, occasionally voicing what he needs to the nurses. They have such a well-coordinated team that this is extremely rare. Maria already knows the entire surgical protocol by heart. Everything went according to plan. The team coped in an hour and a bit. Having applied the last stitches and optical bandages, Christina was taken to the ward. Now we have to wait. Nerves and vessels are perfectly fine, the doctor thought. But will the skin graft well? Waiting for the second patient, the surgeon acted on the old algorithm of hands, gown, mask, having thrown away after the last operation, used gloves, gowns, mask. The department head went to his office to enter both surgical reports into the program. As he walked down the dimly dedicated hallway, he thought about the need to budget for lighting replacement for next year. What kind of surgery department is this? Resented Michael to himself, in which you can't see anything even in the corridor. Having finished all the cases, the surgeon rolled up the program, and having decided to have a little rest from routine, refueled the coffee machine, waiting for it to make him a brisk drink, looked at himself in the mirror, tidying up his hair. On his elongated face stood out a long nose with a small hump, and the consequences of falling off a bicycle in his youth curly and unruly brown hair requires constant cutting and styling. But this dark brown hair favors too light skin. Michael saw wrinkles gathering around his eyes. "I don't look too bad for 40 years old," the man said aloud, not like his college years, of course, but still on the violin. He smiled at his reflection, clicked double cappuccino is ready. Taking the first sip, the head of surgery closed his eyes, plunging into a series of memories. Childhood was not particularly remarkable, but his student life in the capital was very rich. In the dorm, he made friends with his roommate and classmates William on the first day. This lanky kid knew how to relax, hang out, and balliger. What every day tried to teach in Michael, but he did not want to return home to a small backwoods town. So he strived as best as possible to graduate from university and get a place as a boarding student, and then as a resident in a Moscow hospital. To do this, he had to sit at his textbooks and manuals for hours on end and beg his friend not to distract him. William did not resent his friend when he stayed in the dormitory to learn a lecture, and Michael himself never scolded his friend who came back late and climbed in the window. They lived on the first floor, but if they went out together, all the girls were around them. One good-natured, good-looking funny man and balliger, and the second smart and handsome silent, who was looking for a serious relationship. Together, they made a great team. "Ah, how quickly time passes, Michael," Nancy spoke. "Tomorrow, you are scheduled to participate in the medical forum Topical Issues in Medical Practice. You need to get some sleep. Did you ask me to keep track?" "Thank you, Nancy. I'll be done soon." "Your shift ended a couple hours ago." A young nurse poked her head in the door. "Yeah, I know, I'm on my way home." "You're a naughty girl, aren't you, Natasha?" "I know. Is that why you love me?" The girl laughed. "Goodbye, Michael." "Goodbye," the head of the department said as he left. In the parking lot, the man greeted the security guard and headed for his car. His blue, front-wheel drive Kia Rio, always parked under the windows of the emergency room, and every morning and evening he would say hello and goodbye to the front desk staff, the security guards, and even the janitor if he turned around on his way out. Our doctor was by no means a snob. He was a good, conscientious man. Today was no exception. Both the janitor and the guard got their share of smiles and polite phrases. Once on the road, Michael felt as confident as he had at the operating table. Driving had been the man's second passion since his teenage years, when his father put him behind the wheel of an old Zhiguli. He realized he would always drive, thanks to a good circulation of a book on surgery, which still brings passive income for the fact that he was able to buy his Blue Wing and swallow without loans. The salaries of state-funded doctors are not much to go around. You can, of course, work part-time in private clinics. A lot of people did. But Michael didn't like all that. At home, reading tomorrow's lecture, Michael could not concentrate. His thoughts kept returning to the past. "When he was a student, you shouldn't have started and thought about it," shouted the man in his heart. "I better have a drink." About a bill and a bottle of French cognac grateful customers dragged. There's plenty of such goodness. He filled his glass and sat down in the chair next to it on the nightstand. To the left of the sneaky centurion stood a photo from the graduation. Among the faces of his classmates, only one face, Miranda's, caught his eye at once. The same Miranda who had broken up her friendship with William? Not on purpose, of course, but by impressing both boys with her beauty and education. The guys did not quarrel, but began to fight for the girl's attention, trying not to offend each other, but in the end they just shared her attention for two. Images from his young life appeared in front of his eyes again. The shabby girls' dormitory room William and Michael had first come to was no different from their own. The same beds, floors, and furniture. Only this room was much cleaner and a little more cozy. Miranda and Nastya, like all the girls, tried their best to improve and beautify their place of stay. Michael kept his eyes on Miranda, who was characterized by grace. And in this shabby student environment, she looked almost incongruous, like a delicate orchid on a cabbage bed. Her skin color blended wonderfully with her emerald eyes, and golden with his wife's silks, whisk and curls. Gave to her shoulder blades. As you closed the girl's eyes, she with her slender hand gently tucked the unruly twigs behind her ear. At that moment, it would seem as if she had stepped off the canvas of some artist of yesteryear. Miranda was indescribably marvelous. William also did not miss the beauty, who flirtatiously lowered her eyes when the guy's jokes went beyond the bounds of propriety. The only difference between the young men was that one saw beauty, intelligence, potential, and the girl herself, while the other only saw looks and dull eyes. When they returned from the sorority house, they discussed the evening and were surprised to find that they had described the same person each of them had liked. Both wanted to give up their claim on the girl, but couldn't. The feelings were much stronger. Michael, getting a part-time job, took her to theaters, museums, and restaurants, in which they discussed the works of Alexander Fleming, Joseph Lester, and other intellectuals. And William, leading an idle lifestyle, walked with a girl under the moon, dedicating to her short poems and his future earnings. Michael always escorted his beloved to the dormitory. After theaters, exhibitions, and restaurants, they leisurely returned to the campus. It seemed to the young man that the very air was saturated with odors, romance, and passion. In these moments, the couple walked holding hands, and the cool breeze played with their hair, giving this walk a romantic charm. They smiled at each other, enjoying the moment and knowing that nothing could spoil their romantic evening tonight. On one of the streets, Miranda spotted a street musician and asked to linger and listen to his tunes. The guy played the violin, performing the most famous classical pieces. Michael invited his beloved to dance, and they danced right on the street together with the neighboring golden leaves, which were twirled and tossed around them by the wind amidst the noise of the city, and to the applause of a few passers-by who stopped to gaze at such a rare spectacle. The couple twirled in a waltz and gave themselves completely to the music that filled every cell of their skin and made their hearts beat stronger. At that moment, Michael felt that the night belonged only to them. And there was no William, with whom Miranda would also go on a date tomorrow. When the melody ended and changed, the other young lovers came back to reality and continued their way to the dormitory, trying not to ruin with empty conversations the romantic plume of this evening. In their third year, William realized that medicine was not for him and started buying and selling electronics. Just what in the 90s was in short supply and in high demand. He began to unwind very quickly, and the passes at the university were so many that the young man decided, listed on the fourth course. The guy finally completed his studies, taking his documents from the university and plunged into business with his head. Opening more and more points, Michael did not quite understand the position of his friend, with whom the common themes were becoming less and less, but respected for his persistence, with which he went to the goal and his own point of view. He himself had long ago decided on the direction in which he wanted to work. It was surgery. The student wrote a lot of scientific articles, his term papers won prizes, and he was projected a successful career and multi-volume scientific works. Miranda, whom the two boys had been courting with varying success for nearly 3 years, encouraged both of them. And it suited everyone. The girl could not make up her mind with whom she was better, more interesting, and of course, more promising. She didn't think about love at that moment. The times were not right. As a result, after William went into business and received the first big money, Miranda quickly made a decision with Michael is over, and she marries the future businessman. Mike, you see, in a gentle, linear voice, the girl justified herself. I need to think about a future with you. I see my future vaguely. And with William, everything is clear. So you're marrying for money? The young man asked. You don't care about feelings. And I'm not talking about mine. I care. Miranda said indignantly. I like you both. But you have to think about the future. How are you going to provide for your family? Okay, I get it. I won't be in your life anymore. Stop playing the three-way love game. We hope our friendship will remain. You really think that was called friendship? I always knew when you were with him, and he always knew when we were with you. All we needed was a room for the three of us. Yeah, we were okay with that. I wanted to be with you so you'd finally choose to live with me. That's the only reason I put up with all this. Michael, the girl broke the silence. You said it yourself, we were fine with it. Everyone was pursuing their own goals, and Miranda jumped up to the girl falling from the chair. Michael, what's wrong with you? Should I call an ambulance? Get some water. No, I'm fine, replied the girl, making a few Glacko just overexcited for the situation. All right, I'll take whatever you decide. You don't want to have contact with us, be my guest. But know that I love you both. We don't have a lot of courage in this country, so we have to make choices. She smiled, not amused by his flat joke. You have a strange look. Notice the young man and your hasty wedding. It surprises me very much, but it is no longer my business. Goodbye, Miranda. Goodbye. Michael, I'm sorry, whispered her last words addressed to him by the beloved girl who was leaving him forever. After the wedding, William and Miranda moved into a nice rented apartment. Soon they had a child, and William's business was booming. But Michael did not follow their life. He was fully committed to his studies with even more zeal. The only thing he knew from classmates that the couple organized a whole network of stores selling electronics and household appliances. Michael, on the other hand, graduated brilliantly from university. To his pain, in the same group with Rita, who decided not to interrupt his education, the young man received the place of internship and then a resident in one of the most famous hospitals in the country. His new techniques in performing the most complex surgeries that facilitated the rehabilitation of patients were applied all over the country. He lectured at international forums, managed to get a good position, bought an apartment, and even saved up money for a house suitable for a large family, which, however, he never had. You should know, Miranda, talking out of pictures, Michael. What did it cost me to get my life back on track? I don't know how many shards you broke my heart, but none of my women have ever been able to put it back together. My friend's good too. After everything that happened between us before I met you, I let it go. And that should have been the end of our story. But I never got over it, even though I let go. You've been suspended. In Memories and Reflections, the man drank almost half a bottle. In time, he came to his senses. He sent the remnants back to the bar, washed in the glasses. Taking a bath not with a firm gait, Michael went to the bedroom, not forgetting to turn on the alarm clock. Taking a horizontal position in a cold bed and closing his eyes, he fell asleep very quickly, without keeping a single thought in his head. The conference Topical Issues of Medical Practice was held in a face-to-face format with the participation of more than 90 physicians, residents, and students, medical students. With a welcoming speech to the participants addressed the Deputy Head of the Department of Therapeutic and Preventive Care for Mothers and Children and the Dean of the Faculty of Pediatrics, Head of the Department of Optometry, Pediatric Diseases and Fields of Clinical Pediatrics. They warmly welcomed the participants, noted the importance of professional communication, wished the speaker and listeners a successful work. Having listened to several lectures and presented his report, Michael took a lick of time during the break. He did not like long meetings, forums, and subsequent buffets. After the forum, despite the fact that the head of the department had no shift and was not expected at work today, he could not help but visit his patients. It is necessary to make sure that rehabilitation is going well, that nothing was missed during the operation. There are all sorts of cases often said at meetings, Michael. Thank God, in our department force majeure is not observed. And yet, as we doctors say, trust yourself, but check. On the rounds, making sure that everything is in order, The surgeon was able to allocate a little more time to talk about life with lonely patients who had no visitors. After all, positive emotions are the key to recovery. Tomorrow my shift should be discharged already. Thought I'd go back to my car, head of the department. How much I love my job. Without it, my life is empty. Driving home, Michael watched as the sun slowly slipped toward the horizon and dusk fell on the city. Another crazy day is coming to an end. Many Muscovites are in a hurry to get home. Some are in a hurry from work, some from school, some from training. And some, on the contrary, just go out to walk the dog, go on a date, or just walk and breathe fresh air, waiting for the permissive traffic signal. Michael saw solitary runners appearing on the streets, completing their day of jogging. He parked his car in the parking lot near the driveway. The surgeon looked up and surveyed the high-rise building where his apartment was located. It was like Stetlikny. In the evening gloom, the windows glowed. Behind each window hides a different story. School children are doing their homework. Mom is cooking dinner. Grandma is knitting socks, and a young couple is watching some funny movie. I grinned at my rampant imagination. Michael headed home to live out his evening story, taking off his outerwear in the hallway. The doctor felt like he had gotten today off his chest. So full had been the day, but the evening would be a lonely and dear rest after another hard day with forum and hospital business. Michael leisurely went to the kitchen to prepare himself an uncomplicated dinner. How nice that day doesn't abruptly change tonight, thought the man, moving leisurely through his kitchen in search of the necessary items for cooking. And gives us time to come to our senses, summarize the day, analyze our actions, and organize our thoughts. Before heading to bed and dinners, Michael decided to make his favorite coffee in a turbine. He ground the beans by hand, poured the coffee into a pit, added some sugar, and poured in half of the room temperature water. While the man waited for the coffee to stop releasing air bubbles, he cast a glance out the window, in which he could already see only the lights in the windows and the rays of street lamps illuminating the sidewalks and the playground in the yard. The surgeon remembered in time and poured the rest of the water in which he had previously diluted the milk into the turku, putting the turku on the comfort and turning on the smallest mode of the electric stove. Michael stirred the contents of the vessel so that there were no lumps in the coffee. Now the foam would start to rise, thought the man, carefully watching that the drink did not boil. And it is necessary to remove the turka from the burner. After waiting for 3 minutes and filling his favorite coffee pot and a cup with a chipper drink, he went to the balcony. Gazing into the distance, the man saw the colorful signs that caught the eyes of all passersby with the onset of darkness. And Michael was always annoyed by their day and intrusive style. Tomorrow would be a new day and a new life, reflected the head of the department. And today, you can allow yourself to think about something pleasant. Only what? No family, no children. I can't even get a pet. Who's going to take it for walks? After drinking his favorite aromatic coffee and throwing negative thoughts out of his head, Michael returned to the apartment and went to the bathroom to get ready for sleep. Before going to bed, as always, he set the alarm clock, put the phone on the nightstand, having previously put it on charge, and prepared a glass of water so as not to go to the kitchen. In case a thirsty man woke up in the middle of the night with a sense of accomplishment, he fell asleep quickly. Every day at the hospital went by in a regular rhythm until the students, interns, came to the medical facilities. 10 guys were divided into 2 subgroups by the head doctor, one of which was sent to the surgical department under Michael's supervision. Their internship lasted for 2 weeks. During this time, the future medics observed the work of doctors and nurses and other medical staff, and after a couple of days, they even took part in some simple procedures. The 5 students, for the most part, observed the work of surgeons, nurses, and orderlies, attended to the waste. The head of the department assisted in medical examinations and gave simple injections. On a regular basis, the guys sterilized instruments and helped with transports and plastering. When the practice was over, Michael exhaled to follow the students, who were so eager to sprawl around the department, to find them something to do, and then to draw up documents for each of the trainees is a difficult thing. But the good ahead of the surgeon was waiting for more than one shock, but he did not even guess about it. Coming home before another night shift, on the first night shift, After being released from the students from the emergency room, to Michael was brought a young girl in critical condition. In the patient's appearance, the doctor saw something subtly familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere or was once long ago with her acquaintance. But this vague impression quickly passed. An urgent operation was necessary, and while the operating room was being prepared, the surgeon turned to the girl's card and saw her data, and then the ground fell away from under her feet. Then Molly, distressed, repeated the doctor detachedly, looking in front of him. 1997 year of birth. It all fits. She's Miranda and William's daughter. Michael tried to rouse the superintendent from his stupor. Nancy, the nurse. There's nothing wrong with you. Something's wrong. Should we get Liam in for surgery? No. The surgeon came to his senses. I'm fine. I'm operating on my own. In the meantime, try to contact the patient's relatives using the steps you memorized when I was a student. Before the operation, Michael entered the operating room. To his right, as always, were the instruments. Assisting him was Maria again. The smells were familiar. There was a patient lying in front of them, but the doctor felt differently. He was trying to do everything possible to save the girl and bring her to her senses after a successful operation. But she had fallen into a coma. The injuries were too severe. Have you found Molly's family? The surgeon asked the staff on his regular rounds. We don't know how to look. The nurse on duty answered. There's no answer on the house phone. No one's picking up the phone, and the emergency number on the patient's cell phone is out of range. Contact the police, find out who is investigating the accident in which she was injured, and get their contacts, the man ordered. Police have similar information. In the apartment of the girl, except for her belongings, there is no one else. They run through the parents' database. They said to call back in a couple of days. I'll take care of it myself. The surgeon was angry. The girl is dying in a coma, and her condition is unknown to anyone close to her. How can you do that? If they do show up, be sure to call me, even if it's my day off. Do you understand? From time to time in the emergency room of the hospital, Michael noticed the smooth operation of the reception. The girls here have got it all down pat. Patients on the way out of it had a full range of tests: blood, urine, cardiogram, X-ray, ultrasound. If necessary, several specialists can also examine there. All the doctors in the emergency room are very attentive to patients and visitors. There were so many things to do in the hospital that for a while Michael forgot about the girl. An unscheduled fire inspection came. There was a big traffic accident and all the injured were brought to their hospital. And a young woman with a broken leg was also brought in by transfer, who had been treated improperly at the last hospital, resulting in burns on her skin. For this reason you, Helen, cannot operate, and keep in a cast also told the patient head of the department only traction. What's that? How will they fix my leg? A patient was interested in her. Shall I tell you in detail? I would like to know what will be done with me. They just messed me up at the county hospital. It's okay. Michael started the story. After anesthesia, of course. Then we'll attach a weight and your leg will be in the position necessary to be alive. And you'll have to lie down for about 2 weeks. Okay, do it. But when she saw the device they were going to drill into her heel, she screamed, "Mommy, don't scream. I'm scared," the nurse joked. And then, when he saw the face of the chief and the patient, he apologized. Sorry, bad joke. Having completed all the manipulations with Helen, she was sent to a double room, where for the entire 2 weeks she complained of discomfort. Then the load is heavy, then the neighbor is chatty, then she wants to go to the bathroom by herself, then it is noisy, then it blows. And she didn't want to discuss it with any of the staff, only Michael. So he had to go to the left patient all the time. It wasn't until a couple days later on his morning rounds, he asked the nurses if any of the relatives had visited Molly. And having received a negative answer, he went to the girl's room to check her vital signs. There he unexpectedly found a strange visitor, whose appearance left an indelible impression on his memory. He looked like the truest bum with a long beard and rags clothes, which hung on his fatness and figure. He had, among other things, a strange, haggard look and some kind of inhibition. "Man, what are you doing here? Who let you into the ward?" The ward manager asked the visitor sternly, "Who? Come with this patient. Don't disconnect my fiancée." The man began to plead strangely with the doctor. "Don't turn off my fiancée. She can't be disconnected." Nancy shouted into the hallway to Michael. "Who let this madman into the hospital? Much less a comatose patient, call the orderlies. Have them take him the hell out. You can't shut it off." The mysterious visitor tirelessly rambled on until he was led out of the room, checking all the girl's vital signs and noting the decreasing lung compartments. The surgeon took a long look at poor Molly alone, lying on the hospital bed. She lay perfectly still, and the remnants of her dark chestnuts, their hair partially cut them for the operation, lined with spears sticking out in different directions, giving the already thin face, sharpening other forms. "I wonder what color her eyes are, like William's or like Miranda's?" The doctor thought to himself. Looking at the young patient's hand, he whispered, "Where are your parents, girl? Why can't we find them? If we don't find them by the end of the week, I'll have to make the decision whether to take you off life support or not for the last time." With a glance at the girl, Michael left the room, meeting the orderlies in the corridor, who were taking the mad visitor out. He told them to make sure that he was not in the hospital anymore. He also told the guards at the entrance, only it didn't help much. Every day he was caught several times all over the hospital. Then he would come in the hustle and bustle of the crowd, then climb through the window in the emergency room, and then travel freely through all the wards and floors of the hospital. Or he breaks through the main entrance, demanding to be let in. But all this turmoil was actually of little concern to Michael. He was more and more worried about the fact that soon it must be decided what to do with the daughter of a former friend. Not waiting for an answer from the police and the arrival of visitors to the girl, he decided to look for information on the internet himself. It took him only half an hour to search, but what he found occupied his attention for several hours, being in complete shock from the information received. The head of the department from the coupon bottle of cognac and sat for several minutes, not seeing with his eyes, drilling the wall. Things were as follows. His friend's business had gone bankrupt. After accusing William of illegal machinations, non-payment of taxes, and other economic crimes. The trial was short-lived. The case came to court 2 months later, and at the first hearing, William was found guilty on all charges. The former teammate was clearly not ready to serve his sentence in prison, where he was sent after the trial. He committed suicide in solitary confinement 4 days after he was transferred from the detention center to the penal colony. Not like this, remembered a student friend, Michael. In his younger days, William was a tank who dragged everyone, even unprepared comrades, always coming to the rescue, especially for his dorm mates. In that almost murdered dorm, far away from his relatives and home side, they felt a real unity with each other. Before the eyes of the head of the department still stood pictures of student life, and on them was always present William, young, handsome, brave, and enterprising. As Michael mentally went back to his younger years, he recalled a story about his now deceased friend. In their freshman year, when they had not yet met Marguerite, while their friendship was still very strong, William came, or rather crawled into the room after another date, slightly wrinkled, but very happy. William turned to the neighbor's sleepy Michael. "Will you stop staying out late? Every night you don't make it to closing time, and risking your life, climb through the window. No, it's not enough. Take your clothes off." "Shkafa," with a laugh, replied the young man. With the onset of darkness, Moscow only begins to live. And this stupid schedule of the hostel says that I, at the most interesting place, should interrupt the entertainment and return to the shabby buildings on an uncomfortable bed, and even alone. Isn't it scary in the dark, climbing through the window? In case I close it, what are you gonna do? Will you sleep under a bush in the flower bed? Michael, addressing a close friend, said, "William, you are kind, and you love me with brotherly love, so you will never do that. Will you be the first to worry about how I get home and what happens to me?" "That's right," Michael agreed. "And you shamelessly take advantage of that. Good night, buddy." In the morning, the assassins showed up in class and the honors student. Michael answered poorly for the first time at the test and got a C because the teacher did not want to give him a chance by asking an additional question. The whole audience murmured in surprise, and only William stood up for his friend. There was an altercation and talk about unfair treatment of the student. The excellent students from the classroom moved to the dean's office. Michael did not want unnecessary attention to himself, and standing in the corridor, persuaded his friend to calm down and apologize. "I'll take care of it myself," he assured William. "I'll correct the grade, and that's it. It was my own fault. I didn't get enough sleep and got lost in the subject." "No," replied the friend sharply. "You gave the best answer, you just got a little confused." She didn't even give you a chance to think or answer more questions. She gave you a C. "I'm ready to answer for every word I said to her in the classroom." "And you'll go to the chancellor," Michael grinned. "I'll go to the rector and the prosecutor's office." William said, deliberately loud so that Jenna could hear the dean's office. And the conversation didn't last long. After listening to both sides and failing to get an intelligible comment from Michael, the elderly and judicious man decided to convene a committee to certify the student and the teacher. "Are you questioning my qualifications?" The educator was indignant. "I have 2 higher education degrees and a PhD. Last year, I successfully passed the certification because of some small student and his network friend. You are probably going to check me." "That's exactly what you're saying." "Dear Jenna," the dean spoke monotonously and calmly. "In the address of students and your ostentatious speech in my office on such a basically ridiculous occasion, I made a decision about your extraordinary attestation, with raising the question about the possibility of keeping you on the post of a teacher in our university." "Yes. Why did those 2 disrupt my lecture? Check them both out. And if you don't trust my work, I'll write a letter of resignation today. I'll write a letter of resignation today. I won't change my decision," pulling out a pen from my award pocket, the dean said. "You, Jenna, won't change your mind either. Then here's some paper and a pen. I'll sign it as soon as you write it. And you guys are free to go. Go back to your classes. Michael's C's are canceled, but you'll have to answer in the next one. A seminar on the same topic twice as much, but to a different teacher. Goodbye. Goodbye." The friends replied in chorus and hurriedly left the office in the hallway. Michael took a breath, and William lit up with the smile of a winner. It was with this smile that he was remembered forever. Michael. Only victory, only striving forward, only lust for life. Where did it all go? The head of the department thought. At what point in your life did you break so much that you were ready to leave your daughter and wife from them? By the way, where is Miranda? Why is there no mention of her in the articles about William's arrest and trial? Started frantically searching for information about Michael's former lover. The wife of a famous businessman passed away from a brief illness from breast cancer. The wife of businessman William died. These were the headlines of articles in the online space. Adapted 4 years earlier, 2 years before William's arrest. As the surgeon continued to research the materials he found, he discovered that Molly's accident was also quite publicized on the internet. But since no one came to her, no one contacted the hospital or the police, she has no loved ones. And it's up to Michael, as head of the department, to decide the patient's fate. That's just about the critical date, the date of the decision. And the poor doctor agonizes and worries, and does not find a place from longing and pain for the daughter of his once so close people. Having come the night before to the ward, Michael wanted to be alone, next to her to weigh everything once again and make the only right decision. And once again, he found a strange homeless man near the girl, all with the same tedious lamentations by them that there was no way to disconnect his fiancée. Did you yell again, Michael? How did you get in here? You've been kicked out, caught, and sent back in for a week. Why are you acting like this? But the visitor, as if not hearing the doctor, opened before him a traveling suitcase that stood beside the sink. What was Michael's surprise when he saw that it was full of dollar bills? Take all the money for read the strange visitor of the feet, and with each word. The suitcase closer and closer to the doctor. Take it all. Just save my fiancée. I love her very much. I can't live without her. And he cried like a child, wiping his dirty fist. Big tears. Wait a minute, interrupted the head of the department. Where'd you get that money? Ah, no. First of all, tell me, who are you and what are you? Come with Molly. Fiancé. I'm her fiancé. We're supposed to get married. Why doesn't anyone know about this? Why haven't you been contacted? We didn't tell the cops. We didn't tell anyone. We decided to get married when we were little. We decided from childhood. Have you and Molly known each other for a long time? Michael was suddenly interested. Why don't we sit down next to your fiancé like this? No, not here on the chair. Like this. And you will calmly tell me more about your relationship with her and the situation with the accident. What's your name? Alex, sitting down on the chair opposite the doctor, readily answered the visitor and folded his hands in his lap like a model boy in the kindergarten group. Nice to meet you, Alex. And I'm the head of the surgical department. Michael, where did you meet her? My dad worked at Molly's house, her dad's housekeeper. We lived there. I didn't go to school. They wouldn't take me to a regular school, and there was no one to take me to a special school. It took a long time by bus. My daddy tutored me and Aunt Clara and Aunt Wendy. They lived with us. They worked for Papa Molly too. Who lived with you? Where's your mama? My mama died when I was little. Daddy died too. Then we lived with him in a little house. He was the caretaker. And Molly, realizing that the boy is severely underdeveloped, the doctor decided to put the story in the right direction. Leading questions, she's a good one. Shown in the most good-natured and happy smile. Looked at the still-lying girl Alex. She never hurt me. We played together, we studied together. She taught me math. I can even count the change myself at the store, he added. Everyone laughed and called us bride and groom. He smiled again. As you grew up, how did your relationship work out? She started walking with me less. Alex peed and sighed. Molly used to go out with other kids. They didn't take me with them. She even stopped saying hello to me. He frowned even more. I always watched her, made sure no one hurt her. I love her. She's my fiancée and I'm her fiancé, he added stubbornly. What happened to William? Molly's dad. Where did the house they lived in go? Where did the suitcase with the money come from? Uncle William left with the men in uniform. I never saw him again. Molly said they put him in jail. Conspirators. Alex said in a lowered voice, we gotta go, give them the house. My daddy got upset, got sick, and died a month later. And me. I watched Molly, worried about what would happen to her. She was all alone. Her mom died a long time ago. Now her daddy's gone. Molly lives far away in the city, in an apartment on the 8th floor. She drinks a lot. Alex shook his head disapprovingly. There are always a lot of bottles in the garbage bags. My daddy used to drink heavily too. And then, when the master was taken away. So that's how she got into the accident. Michael said thoughtfully. Yes, she has a big car. Alex pointed with his hands. She wasn't taken away. He made a worried face. She drank a lot. She didn't leave the house for 2 days. Then she came out wobbling like a tree in a storm. She got behind the wheel and drove off. I screamed Molly. Come back, you're struggling, but I couldn't catch up. She's in a car. It's sad, the guy concluded and gave up. We saw from the tests that she had alcohol in her blood, but not as high as if she'd been drinking for a couple days, the surgeon reasoned aloud. A little above mild intoxication. Tell me, does she have any siblings, grandparents, uncles, aunts, any relatives? No, sighed Alex. She has no one but me. That's why she's saying that she was almost alone. I don't count, he added more. Sorrowfully and burst into tears again. I see. Michael stood up and touched the boy on the shoulder. Well, don't cry, Alex. Everything will be all right. Thank you for telling me everything. I won't send you away anymore. Now I'll tell you to wash, clean up, feed you, and give you clean clothes. Tomorrow we'll decide with our colleagues what to do with yours. He stumped Molly. Where did you get the suitcase? Tell me though, could it be someone else's? No, desperately shook his head. Alex, the suitcase is for Molly. He's her suitcase. Sighed well, the uncomprehending doctor sighed. I'm hiding it for now, don't worry, he added. Seeing the concern in the guy's eyes. I won't take anything from there. I give my word, hiding the suitcase with the money in the safe of his office. The head of the department went home to rest and think about what to do with the patient, because he still could not make a final decision. And there was so much new information. Leaving, he asked the nurse on duty to take Alex to the staff shower room, give him everything he needed, and change him into clean clothes he had brought from home. And feed him, he added his request, and let him stay close to the patient. He's a good kid, and it's true that he's severely retarded, but he loves her. Michael asked Nancy, who was present, "Are you sure the relatives won't like it if we let some bum like a girl in? She's got no one. No one's been coming for a while. His parents are dead, and he's not homeless. He's just in difficult circumstances. Have some respect for the customer. But he's a childhood friend of hers. He's a voice surgeon. And I will not allow to offend a person just because he looks strange and behaves differently than you expected," reprimanded the employee. "Okay, I hear you," the woman was embarrassed. "I'll send the guy to clean himself up right away." The surgeon ran through all the options in his head one more time. How could Molly be helped? But he couldn't think of anything, having failed another medical commission. He outlined the situation to his colleagues and offered to wait a bit, hoping that the patient would wake up. The doctors, having consulted, decided to give the girl one more chance to get out. A week passed after she was disconnected from the life support machine. Alex did not leave his fiancée's side, only occasionally leaving the room for a walk in the fresh air. Michael, looking at the boy, assumed that he had oligophrenia, not possibly acquired after a viral meningitis suffered, and not further black in childhood. While making his rounds for the next 2 weeks, the head of the ward often lingered in the corridor near the open door to the ward to listen to what Molly's so-called fiancé was saying. He sang songs, talked about what was happening outside the window, and begged her to wake up. Alex was not completely useless. He gladly helped nurses and orderlies to take care of patients, not only for his Molly, but also for everyone in the ward. He did not shy away from the dirtiest work. He did everything quickly, skillfully, and was not embarrassed about it. Everyone noted with what tenderness and care he does it, and how worried for his patient. But nothing helped the poor woman. She was still in a coma, and her vital signs did not change. Quite often resting all over a cup of tea, the nurses gossiped, wondering why Michael became the caretaker of this strange kid. Could it be his son? Young Betty suggested, recently having taken a job as a surgical ward nurse. No disagreed with the information. Head nurse Maria, "He's a man of honor. If he was, we'd know. He wouldn't hide the boy. It's something else." Did you see how confused he was when he saw the data on that comatose patient? Which one? Betty and Nancy practically asked in unison. Yes, the one from the accident. Well, the one who's still in a coma. In Ward 5, Maria finally clarified. The one Alex is taking care of, with the permission of the superintendent. I've forgotten her name, for crying out loud. Helped Nancy's older sister, Michael Molly, the nurse. And how do you remember so accurately? Maria asked. Yes, we searched for relatives for a long time. We contacted the police. And then Nancy shared the information in a whisper. I saw in the chief's search queries and browser history information about the patient's relatives. That's the first time I've ever seen the chief do a family search. I'm telling you, it's weird. You think it's his mistress. After a few minutes of silence, Betty asked, "What's with your delusions? Do you have ideas all the time?" Irritatedly made a remark to the girl by the head nurse. And also the suitcase remembered Nancy. What suitcase? What are you talking about? Maria asked with genuine interest. When I went to hand over the discharge papers, I saw a large suitcase on wheels, obviously a woman's and with travel records. I thought maybe I was bringing a woman and asked casually, "What is it that you, Michael, on a trip not as you gathered?" What did he throw over my shoulder? That it wasn't his, it was our patient's. This Alex brought it in and asked me to save it for Miranda. I thought about it for a while. Head nurse, did you bother to look at the suitcase afterwards? I did, but he hid it somewhere. I haven't found it yet. Nancy turned toward the door and listened. What was that noise in the hallway? Is it night outside? What happened out there? The orderly wondered. Before what? Heading to the convention, Lenski Post muttered under his nose Maria. Alex yells, "Can't you hear it? We need to find out. Maybe something happened." Michael was on duty that night, filling out the necessary paperwork and handling the administrative affairs of the department while drinking fresh emergency coffee. After 2 hours, he was called to nursing and post. Some nonsensical words were heard in the background, and the speaker's voice trailed off into a shout. After a couple minutes, the doctor came to the post and found a pandemonium of night nurses trying to calm and talk Alex down. "Here you have it," said the head nurse, Maria. "Look, but I told you not to leave him here. He's doing a concert. He can't say a word. All he does is yell, 'It's the good doctor.' And you all thought it was me." The surgeon asked her. "Who else?" "The mullah woman. Of all the doctors, you're the only one with him and the king. You talked to him yourself. We couldn't learn anything from this weak-minded man. Be kind, respect your fellow patients and their visitors. Otherwise, we'll say goodbye to you," Michael threatened the older sister. "You scared me." The experienced employee didn't shy away. "You know very well that you can't find anyone for that kind of money." Michael raised an eyebrow and wanted to read more left. Senior nurse changed his mind. He knew perfectly well that she was a kind woman, just outwardly wanting to look tough and unyielding. "Alex," turned to the guy surgeon, "you called me? See, I'm here. Is something wrong?" She opened her eyes, opened them, and didn't look at me. Just blinked, and that was it. All on emotions, hastily said the young man. "Who's Molly?" Yes, her green eyes were open again. Alex said dreamily. "Not like the field where we lived. There was a field of green in the summer so bright." Her eyes were like that. Let's go. It's urgent." All the nurses and the head of the department rushed after the guy, rushing to Molly's room, having seen some minor changes in her vitals that hadn't changed for a month. Michael urgently ordered a CT scan of her head to check her brain activity. 15 minutes later, the doctor received the results, which clearly showed an undeniable improvement. But in addition, the scan revealed a small blackout in the brain. "We need to get her out of the coma first." The oncologist voiced his opinion at the medical committee, and then get her permission for surgery. Don't forget, she has a hereditary predisposition to cancer. As a result, Molly was replaced with more powerful drugs to speed up her recovery from the coma, and organized a round-the-clock duty of medical personnel in the patient's room for immediate response. After a few days, Molly fully recovered. She was sent for the necessary examinations and left in the hospital for further observation. After lunch, Michael from the oncologist came to the patient's room. They informed the girl of their suspicions, showed the blackout on the brain scans, and asked for permission to perform a punctuation test. "What's that?" asked Molly, dumbfounded by the possible diagnosis. "How is it done and why should it be explained?" Puncture, explained to the girl Michael. "The doctor will make a puncture on your back and leave the needle until the brain fluid starts to flow out of the needle. When the necessary amount of fluid for analysis is collected, the needle will be removed. It's very painful in the back. No, we'll give you a local anesthetic." The oncologist has entered the dialogue. "You will not feel anything. But if the doctor accidentally touches a nerve with the needle during the puncture, you may experience discomfort and leg cramps. In some patients, the procedure is accompanied by prolonged migraines." And the head of the department interrupted his colleague. "There's no need to scare the patient. And why do you need to make this puncture? You can't tell anything from the scans or other tests." Molly asked in a trembling voice. "To find out what exactly you are ill with and what medications are used to treat it," the oncologist replied. "All right, let me sign the consent." The next morning, Miranda's patient was given a ballpoint. The procedure itself was done in a sitting position. Molly was explained that there is a lumen inside the needle, which is where the liquid needed for the analysis comes in. 4 milliliters were put into special tubes and sent to the laboratory, telling the patient to wait a few days for the results. 5 days of waiting passed for her in unbearable uncertainty, and Alex, with his intrusive network and eternal pestering, not only annoyed the girl. She tried to peacefully persuade the guy to leave, chased him away screaming. But he always came back to his favorite Molly. "Jesus, Alex." scolded the girl her annoying visitor, who was not at all happy. "What are you doing here again?" "I've been here all the time," answered the happy boy. "Followed you awake singing songs the whole time you slept. The good doctor let me." "Michael, is that the good doctor?" "Yeah, he talked to me. And he let me stay when no one else came to see you. I nursed you back to health the whole time. And now that you're awake, I'm not leaving." Alex shook his head stubbornly. "I have to be here with you." Exactly so confirmed the ward manager who entered the room. "You, Molly, do not scold him and do not catch up. He was with you all this time, insisted that we did not disconnect you from the machines. You might never have woken up. Amazing." Turning to the guide, the girl asked how you were not afraid to talk to strangers. "For your sake, I am ready for anything," Alex answered. "Sorry to interfere in the conversation, but your test results have come." Turning to the patient, said the surgeon. "Don't keep me waiting, Michael." With anxiety in her voice, asked Molly, "Tell it like it is. I'm ready to hear anything." "The results are negative. You don't have meningitis cancer or any other brain inflammation." "What about the blackout on the scans and the MRI?" Afraid to get excited in advance, the girl asked. "We sent your scans to the cancer hospital." More narrow specialist calmly told the head of the department. He said that it was just a bruise and a small swelling that remained after the accident. He said to do another scan in a week and a half. "Why?" Asked Alex to make sure the diagnosis was correct. "And if the swelling does not go away on its own, it will be necessary to train it. It's not life-threatening." "Still cannot believe my happiness," whispered the patient. "No, you're fine. And I'd like to talk about this suitcase ride to the hospital," said Michael. "It was brought to your room by Alex. He asked me to take everything inside as long as we didn't shut down your machines. I doubted that the contents belonged to the young man, so I kept the suitcase with me to give to you. It's my mother's favorite suitcase," Molly said confused. "I thought it was lost. It's filled with notes about my mom's best trips. Paris, Milan, Rome, Mexico." "Where did Alex get it? What's in it?" When Molly opened the suitcase, she was speechless for a minute. "Alex, where did you get this money?" Finally shocked, she asked. "The good landlady gave this suitcase and said that the beautiful papers I should give you. When she got sick was already bad," recalled the kid. "She came when the folder was not, and she gave it to me. She told me to hide it. She didn't say anything else. The girl said to give my Molly. If trouble comes and you kept the suitcase all this time and didn't touch the money, how did you even manage to keep it?" "I hid it well," Alex smiled. "In the doghouse, cut off the big doghouse. Good when bad men in uniform came and we all left. I left with the suitcase. I don't have a house of my own. I slept wherever I could. But I kept it all, hid it again in an old nobody's house. Your mom asked me to give it to you, but I don't want it. I wanted to save you and offered the doctor money, but he's a good man. He doesn't want anything. He gave it all back to you. Thanks for the compliment." Michael stepped in. "But I did what every self-respecting doctor and person would do." "To you, doctor, thank you," thanked Molly. "Not everyone would refuse such a sum, especially since only you would know about it, which no one would believe. I also wanted to talk to you, Molly, about my parents. They're dead. I'm an orphan now, my mom from cancer. About 4 years ago, and my father hanged himself 2 years ago." The girl spoke with pain in her voice, as if she had been pestered with such questions for a long time. "I know that. That is what the surgeon said. But I wanted to say that I knew your parents. We were friends in medical school. You're probably aware that my father didn't finish medical school, but plunged into business, and my mother got a specialty. But I didn't go any further than boarding schools and residency. Yes, my parents told me about how they met and where they studied. They had a friend my dad shared a dorm room with. Michael was his name. I think he talked about him a lot, and he was sorry they stopped talking. You don't know him." This Michael is now standing in front of you, slightly tilted his head surgeon. Oh, Molly's confused. "I didn't realize that Michael could be a friend and classmate of Mom and Dad. Sorry, yeah, we kind of lost touch with your parents. Everyone had their own worries, and I was surprised when no one came to see you. And when I found out, I was in complete shock for a long time. I'm sorry for your loss. I realize the time for this has passed, but I wasn't aware of it. And if you need anything, including medical help and any kind of help at all," said the head of the department, "I'll be there for you. Don't think you're all alone. You have a loyal friend, Alex, and a personal doctor, Michael. Thank you so much." Molly wept. "I'm very grateful to you and to you, Alex. I really thought I was all alone. I was so lonely that I drank so much, but it didn't help." "What happened the day of the accident?" "Tell me, please," the surgeon asked me, "based on your test results. You have a very low blood alcohol reading. A few days before the accident, I decided I had to stop drinking. I even poured all but one bottle down the sink. I collected the empty cans and bottles in a garbage bag and looked at it for a long time without throwing it away. But I felt so bad. I couldn't forget myself, as I usually did after drinking alcohol. And on the day of the accident, when I woke up, I decided that there was no reason to live. And after 2 drinks from the rest of the bottle, I got behind the wheel and crashed into a concrete barrier on the highway. But I guess my parents don't need me there yet, since I finally came to my senses and I'm healthy." Of course they don't. Taking the girl's hand, Michael said, "You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. The only thing you need is the shoulder of a close person who will support you, and then you will come to your senses and stand on your feet. Doctor, can you sit with me during evening rounds?" Molly asked me shyly, "And tell me about my parents when they were young, what they were like, what they did, what they loved." "Yes, of course. And I would be glad to know about my friends what you know," you answered, leaving the room, Michael. "See you tonight." Molly began to feel as if time had stopped in her room. She has no connection to the world outside the hospital, and all that exists now is a blink between an uncertain future and a negative past. However, there is a cynic in this sad ward who tries his best to offer hope, support, and a few warm words. Tired of the bed in her room, the girl wanted to walk on the floor to stretch her legs, and offered Alex to keep her company. Of course, her friend happily agreed. The ward, where the patient was lying, was on the 2nd floor. In the main corridor, there was a spacious hall for rest, the windows of which overlooked the locked balcony. Next to it was the dining room. And on the other side, there were shower toilets and several small wards. Molly sat down in the hall on a soft sofa and looked out the window, but there was only the city stadium, where school children were running around. Having made a short walk, the girl was tired and asked Alex to take her back to the ward 4. Returning to the necessary corridor, they passed by the central room where all the basic procedures were done. There was a nurse sitting at a table and a patient sitting on a couch, waiting for recommendations or medications to be administered to him. Molly, who had only recently regained consciousness, was now required to take the medication 3 times a day. In the ward, the girl looked around, but saw nothing new. Everything was still in place. 2 bedside tables, a drip, and Natalka with some medical devices. Opposite the bunk, a small closet for clothes, and a refrigerator with a TV on it. Alex sits on one of the chairs, looking at the girl with a loving and devoted gaze. Sighing, she decided to talk to her childhood friend and remember the joyful moments from her former life in a large and loving family. With smiles on their faces, they recalled their childhood, that carefree time when they were friends, constantly going out and enjoying every moment of life. Both of them even remembered the games that were their favorite in their childhood. They often played pharmacy, taking out all the medicines from the home medicine cabinet and arranging them on the improvised showcase, and then selling them to each other. "And do you remember what we used to pay with?" Through the tears, Molly asked. "We used to draw money, buy medicine, and get terribly excited about the process." Library remembered another favorite game. "Alex, we played library. It's a great game." "Aha. I was always the librarian and used to lend you the books I used to lug from Dad's study and teach me how to read, shy." Alex turned to the window and stopped talking. Molly realized that it was pointless to continue this conversation. She would only make the guy reclined painfully on the pillows. She closed her eyes and sank back into her happy time of childhood, where Daddy loves Mommy very much, and the 2 of them without. Loves her daughter. She plays with Alex and the neighbor's children, rests at the sea, runs barefoot on the grass. She studies with excellent grades, pleases her parents, and then spoils the relationship with her dad. Mom's illness, Mom's death, Dad's arrest, and his terrible end. I don't want to remember it out loud, Molly muttered. But she was well aware that those horrible memories would never leave her for the rest of her life. In such self-serving thoughts, and the powerless patient fell asleep, and the faithful Alex covered her more comfortably and again took up his post at her bedside. Looking at Molly, the boy remembered how they, being very small, often walked on the lawn in front of her parents' house. At the very entrance, Alex and Molly liked to pluck flowers that grew in large flower beds of the most bizarre configurations. Back then, in their distant happy childhood, no one swore at the children. Everyone was so kind, so loving to each other. It seemed to little Alex that everybody loved him here too, and that such a beautiful life would go on forever. And now he did not understand why everything had changed so much and why his beloved Molly was not going to live with him in the same house as before. Probably she was just very, very sick. She should be properly treated by a good doctor. Alex thought, and that thought made him feel better. A good doctor will cure Molly, and everything will be back to normal. After dinner, Michael made his usual rounds, leaving Novikova to make the necessary notes in the charts, and ordered in the resident. He went to Molly's room with a portion of cakes bought in the afternoon in the pastry shop across the street and a bag of tea brew. Good evening, Molly. Alex moved a table on wheels to the bunk. The head of the department sat down to the guys. Now we'll drink tea, treat cakes, and chat. How great, Choir answered the youth and laughed in unison. Laughter is good. It prolongs life and speeds up recovery, said the doctor, pouring tea into mugs to treat the guys. Thank you. Taking a hot drink and taking a few sips, the girl closed her eyes in pleasure. It's been a long time since I drank tea. My mom made a delicious tea with herbs she collected and grown herself. Miranda was fond of medicinal herbs when she was a student. Michael remembered. All the time in their dorm room, there was a unique aroma. Something for the throat, something for the lungs, something for the stomach, and so on. She tried to get us all involved too, and was very psychotic that we didn't understand anything and didn't want to understand. He laughed good-naturedly. Yes, it was the same at home, Molly said dreamily. Everything was in traumas. She used to put them in her food and make different drinks. The tea was unparalleled. I could drink gallons of it. She was a good hostess. I got into a dialogue with Alex. She never scolded me, and she never scolded my grandmother. She always gave us better food. Very much like Molly. Michael confirmed his words, and, turning to the girl, added, what were the relations in your family? How did they live with your father? I hope in love and harmony. My father loved me in his own way, and I loved him, but also in my own way, Molly smiled. But I was really close only with my mom. Through tears, she whispered, Mom never left me with babysitters or grandmothers. She herself always practiced with me. She was my best and closest friend. My father hated it. He thought it was wrong, that there would be no respect for parents. If you consider them your friends. The master often scolded, finished the cake, confirmed Alex, and punished Molly. And she would run away to my dad and me. We always took her in and hit her, punished her. Michael was surprised. Didn't hit her? No, never. Renetta was rubbing the corner of the blanket, as if nervous, but sometimes closed for various offenses in the room, tried to bring up as a boy. And I felt like he wasn't my dad because of his behavior when I was a kid. After all, my mom is the best, the kindest, and my father should be the same. But he always loved my mom much more than he loved me. I don't think William meant to hurt you. He probably just wanted to prepare you for growing up on your own and didn't think you'd see it that way, justified the surgeon's former friend. Maybe Molly sighed. But it didn't work for me, as you can see. When Mom was gone, it was so hard for me. I felt terribly lonely, and Dad didn't react to my feelings. After his arrest and suicide, I was left all alone in this huge, empty world. You have me and a good doctor, gently touched her arm, Alex. And for that, I am grateful to you both. Molly smiled weakly and looked at the suitcase. I also seem to have money now that I don't even know what to do with. You've got plenty of time to figure out what you want out of life and what you're going to do, and the money will be good for you. The doctor looked at his watch and started to get ready. I've got to run. Rest, gain strength, and I'll drop by tomorrow. We'll talk more. Thank you. See you later, Molly said goodbye to the surgeon. After the head of the department, the girl thought for a long time about what she wanted from her life, but decided nothing when her gaze fell again on the mother's suitcase. She asked Alex to hand it over, opening it Molly. In addition to the money, she discovered some sort of protruding piece of paper in the pocket and top lid of the suitcase. It turned out to be a sealed envelope, signed in my mother's hand with my favorite beads. Only Molly called her that. Barely looking through a veil of tears, the girl pulled out a double-folded sheet of paper, written in her mother's neat handwriting. My sweet bead, if you are reading this letter, it means that Alex has handed you my suitcase, and I have no doubt from the whole amount. He's a loyal guy who loves you to bits in his own way. And please don't leave him behind in this life. His father's in a bad way. There's no one else for him but our family. I think the disease will catch up with me soon, and you'll be all alone in this world you've always been so wary of. I'm scared to realize that. Daughter, I hope you and your daddy can get through this loss with dignity. And all I ask is that you be there for each other. Daddy loves you very much, no matter what. And even though I know you're not his own daughter, I'm sorry, my dear, to tell you this. That's it. But I've never found the strength in my whole life to tell you the truth. You remember we told you about our college friend Mike? Well, he was your dad's best friend, and he was my favorite person, as they say nowadays, boyfriend. Honey, you might be shocked, but I dated both your dad and Michael at the same time. They knew about it, but no one was openly against it. And I couldn't figure out who I loved more. For 3 years, I still think I loved them equally. But at that time, you had to think not only about that and the feeling, but also about the material side of life. Your dad went into business, started making good money. After a while, we found out I was pregnant, and he proposed to me. I said yes. 2 days later, I had to end my relationship with Michael. It was so painful, and I felt so bad. I was suffering from terrible toxicosis. I almost passed out during that conversation. And Michael was so emotional about our breakup, he didn't even realize it. I have to admit, I've been following Michael's life. I found out that he distinguished himself in residency, became a graduate student in the department, and then a PhD, a leading surgeon. And now he's probably a doctor by now. Your dad always thought you were his own daughter, and so did I. We were sure of it. But when you were about 5, we wanted to have another baby, but we couldn't. It took a year and a second year. Eventually, we went to the doctors, and it turned out that William couldn't have children, and it was congenital. The DNA test confirmed that you weren't his daughter. But he never stopped thinking you were. You thought he was too hard on you. But he was just trying to raise you to be a strong, self-sufficient person who could survive in our cruel world. As you have probably already guessed, your biological father is our student friend Michael, now a famous surgeon. If something happens, although I really hope that you and your dad will be fine, but in case you can find him, address him personally. He's a good man, will take you in, and be happy to know he has a daughter. And you also have Alex. Remember him always. You are responsible for him, daughter. Be smart. Don't waste the money you got. Because if Alex gave it to you, you're in trouble. I hope that now, when you read this letter, you are happy and enjoy life, and maybe your problems are not related to my absence. I want to believe that you and Dad are still supporting each other no matter what. You're my family, you know I'll always be there for you. I'll always follow your footsteps because I can't be away from you. If you feel anxious or need to talk, look up to the sky and talk to me. I'll always listen to you, even if I'm not tangibly near you. My little one, keep forever in you that little fragile girl saved in yourself all the best qualities, and never betrayed anyone. Don't do what I did. You'll hurt not only the person you betray, but yourself. And you'll have to live with that for the rest of your life. And also, please don't leave your dad. Even if you decide to meet and recognize Michael as your father, never betray the father who raised you. He won't be able to survive being separated from you. He has been afraid of it for too long and is not as strong of character as he wants to always appear. Michael ended up being stronger and more persistent than all of us. Be more open and affectionate to Alex. Don't forget your friendship and his loyalty. Let that thread from a happy childhood keep you afloat through the most difficult and challenging times of your life. There is so much more I would like to tell you. How little time fate has given me. It's time to say goodbye. I really hope this message of mine has reached you and helped you in your difficult situation. Know that I love you very much, and my love is stronger than death itself. Be happy, my daughter, and I will watch you from above and help you in everything. Your mom. Filling the letter written in Mom's handwriting with salty tears, and not knowing how to calm down, Molly leaned back on the pillow and sobbed in her voice. Alex, trying to figure out what had upset her so much. Spinning around the bunk, not knowing what to do, ran to get the good doctor as he and Michael ran into the room. Molly had already calmed down, but was shaking and silent. When she was asked what was wrong, she simply handed the surgeon a neatly folded sheet of paper without uttering a single word. Michael immediately recognized the handwriting of his former lover. He carefully kept all her letters and notes in the top drawer of his desk in his home office, occasionally rereading them with each line of this heavy letter. It became harder and harder for him to breathe. As you've probably already realized, your real father is our student friend Mike, and now a famous surgeon Michael. Miranda wrote to her daughter. How is that possible? My God. Slumped in his chair, the man clamped his hand over his mouth and dumbfounded. Looked up at Molly. There were tears in his eyes. You are my daughter. He finally spoke out, not believing the sound of his own voice all his life. Until the last minute, I have loved and will love only one woman, your mother. Oh my God, why? Why was life so unfair? He got up from his chair and nervously paced the room. Molly looked at him, still silent. Her leaving it jarred me. Turning to the girl with heat, the doctor said, I went headlong into my studies, cut off all contact with your parents. It seemed to be easier that way, but it didn't help. Molly finished for him and bit her lower lip nervously. All my relationships ended in nothing. I was bored with every woman in all of them. I was only looking for her alone. I never managed to create a family of my own. My parents left this world, and I have no children, Michael sadly noted. Now you do. The girl whispered hopefully, looking at him. Now you do. Of course you do. Michael repeated after her and slapped his forehead. What the hell am I talking about? I'm sorry, Molly daughter. He walked over to her bed and timidly asked her if he could give you a hug. She smiled tentatively at him. Yes, Daddy, God, it's beautiful. It's just beautiful, exclaimed Michael. When the first kinship embrace took place, you and I will always be together now. You are my daughter of my blood. I will not let you go anywhere from now on. What if Mom was wrong? Molly said not bravely. I don't know what to believe now. We'll do another test if you want, the doctor said, stroking her shoulder. And you know what? I don't care what the results are. If Miranda says you are my daughter, then you are. The doctor thought for a moment, thinking, honey, why don't you and I'd eat everything? I have a country house that I built as if I had a big family, but it's been empty for years, and now it'll come in handy. I don't know if it's worth it. Molly replied nervously. Are you scared? Why would I be? Of course, it's all so sudden. Think, my dear, I'm not rushing you. The surgeon spoke quickly. I'll understand. I'll accept any decision you make. I'm sorry. Don't be angry, okay? The doctor is good. Suddenly exclaimed Alex, whom everyone had forgotten about. He'll be a good dad. He'll love and protect, I'm sure. And the guy smiled contentedly. Michael, I mean Daddy. Embarrassed at first, Molly, you misunderstood me. Thoughts are yours, she said. And so are you. I really want to live with you, to socialize, to be friends, to be a real family. But I'm not sure if you need an alcoholic daughter. Pronouncing these difficult words, the girl in despair covered her face with her hands foolishly. Hugging the girl, assured her Michael, you are my daughter. To think I have a daughter. God, I love you more than life. Can anything scare me? And we're together now, so we'll get through this. And Alex will help us. Yes, says the happy little guy. Come here. Michael called him over for a hug. "We're a family now. You'll be with my son too." So well-hugged the trio from the corridor saw the nurse Betty, who came to perform her daily cleaning duties, and immediately called about it 3 times all over the ward. Of course, everyone had already noticed that while Molly was being treated and recovered, the ward manager never left her without attention. At any free minute, he spent time with the girl and even walked with her on the territory of the hospital, where behind the tall trees almost could not be seen the low hospital buildings. There among the mighty pines peacefully, while reading in the wind and dense thickets of unknown outgoing shrubbery, father and daughter would take walks along the hospital alleys and paths. Often they walked in silence, and each of them thought about his own, only squeezing their hands tighter to feel the warmth of a loved one. Now no nurse's meeting over tea or coffee passed without a discussion of the head and his daughter. Various rumors spread quickly through the hospital. Even though Michael had told the staff the truth right away, he's got a daughter who looks like he's twisting bandages. Started talking about Maria's surgery for a drunk with a bunch of health problems and a strange companion. That's a joy. Aren't you jealous? Standing up for the boss, Nancy, who was filling out patient charts after procedures. "I don't have a family myself and don't expect to. That's what you're freaking out about. I'm very happy for Michael. He's still young. Maybe the girl will do just fine. Natashka, you don't meddle in my private life," the older sister threatened with a screw. "I don't have a child or a kitten myself. Yes, but this is my conscious position. And I with a challenge, looking at the interlocutor," said Nancy. "Unlike some people, I don't drool with envy." One thing without malicious gossip, and another boorish and envious, begrudging attitude to colleagues. Girls do not argue. Young Betty tried to diffuse the situation. "You've seen how beautiful the girl is, probably like her mother. She doesn't look like him at all. Michael, she's also very pretty," switched to a young nurse. "What else would you know about male beauty? She's got his eyes, by the way. Yes, Betty, I agree with Maria here." As she continued to fill out patient charts, Nancy said, "And his hair is the same shade, but his eyes are probably his mom's," the young nurse put in. Dropping his case and getting angry. "Maria, you always say the wrong thing. What are you obsessing about? How about in the mother? Maybe a grandmother, maybe a father or a young man passing by. Or maybe she was walking around somewhere else. When we get DNA, then we'll think at our leisure, who does she look like? And is there anything in common between her and our Michael? What's wrong with this girl? She's fine. She's just in a difficult life situation with no support and no loved ones. Now I think she'll get better." Nancy stood up for the superintendent's daughter. "Michael will take care of her properly now, and let her do it in a more peaceful way," the head nurse said. "Maybe he'll help that retarded Aleka kid and turn him in." "I don't think so." On the way out of the sisters, Betty said, "I think he'll adopt him too. Or take him into foster care. I mean, she feels sorry for everyone. How will she live?" Looking at the nurses walking down the corridor, Maria said, "What are you looking at?" "Take for work," bellowed, and she hesitated at the nurse's post. "But would you do the work yourself?" "Dear head nurse," said Nancy mockingly, going with the patient records to the head of the department. "You're keeping an eye on everyone. Have you forgotten about yourself? I'll take care of myself," trying to hide a smile, through her interlocutor woman and began to drive the young orderlies hard. A month passed. Molly had fully recovered. Now she was to be treated for alcohol addiction. Michael, thanks to his connections, was able to get her into a good free clinic. A DNA test confirmed their relationship. The girl even wanted to recognize his paternity. To change it. In the act of birth, to get a new birth certificate and a new passport. That's what she did with the help of her father. After a couple months, she became Michael and Molly and got a new passport, which she was overjoyed about. At every meeting, on every walk, they opened up to each other more and more. Michael wanted to learn as much as he could about his daughter and Miranda, for his love for her had not ended, even now that he knew she was gone, especially now that it was revealed that she had given him a daughter recovery from alcohol addiction. It's a complicated process. It is one in which both the patient and his or her loved ones have a vested interest in the outcome of treatment. Molly and her father were extremely interested in this, so the treatment followed a standard scenario. At the initial stage, the consequences of alcohol intoxication were treated, during which physical health is restored and the unnecessary syndrome is eliminated again. Molly was allowed to socialize with other patients, but she neglected this for a long time, until one day she met Julia on a walk. Every day, Molly took walks in a small park on the closed territory of the drug treatment center. Walking in the fresh air, despite all her problems, she realized that this world was beautiful and worth living in. The light summer breeze made the trees and bushes dance and flutter with every touch. And this marvelous simple sight, Molly was mesmerized. For a long time, she could not afford to just wander among nature, thinking about nothing and not afraid of anything. But today, near her favorite red clune, she found another girl, also mesmerized by the intricate dance of the leaves. Molly had never seen her before. "Hi, you're new." She started the conversation with a stranger. "I have the impression that I'm the only one who likes to walk here and to look at the dancing leaves." She laughed. "Hi." Without taking her eyes off the trees, the girl spoke. "You know, I was watching you from the window, and for a long time I could not understand why you stand here for a long time and watch for some reason. I was curious. Finally, I decided to go out and look through your window myself." Molly asked. "No, not far over there," waving her hand at the right wing of the building, answered the stranger. "My window is on the second floor, but it's an awkward view because the angle is wrong. From there, you can see the crown against the sky, and that's it. And this is your leaf dance. No, I am Molly, and I am Julia." Finally, looking into the eyes of the interlocutor, answered with a smile and the girl. With this dialogue and began the friendship of the two girls, who had many similar moments in their fate. Molly shared her misfortune almost immediately after the death of her mother. She never had a close person to open up to, but except for her somewhat doomed father. And in this nice girl, she immediately recognized a kindred spirit, almost a sister. On another walk together, Julia told Molly about her childhood. "I never knew my father. My mother said that he was some kind of an enlisted soldier from a military unit. They are stationed near our town. I'm not a Muscovite," my friend Molly clarified. "I never needed a father. My grandmother, loved me for both parents. And Mom, what about Mom? I can't even call her that word. From early childhood, I only remember that she always beat me and scolded me, and she herself drank and went out with men." "You lived with her? Didn't your grandmother take you away all the time?" Molly asked her new friend. "The three of us lived in a privatized apartment, privatized for my grandmother and my mother," Julia hummed. "We had no choice. We had to put up with it, but I shared a room with my grandmother. So I didn't see my mother's shenanigans in detail. My grandmother was always involved with me and took me to school, and did my homework with me and taught me how to manage the household, how to cook. In short, she prepared me for adulthood as a mother." "You say that as if Grandma's not alive anymore." "She is." Tears glistened in her friend's eyes, blue as the clearest sky. "She died when I was 14. I found her in the bathroom. Where did she wash when she had a blood clot? The doctors said death was instantaneous and there was no way to help her. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's very hard to lose loved ones." Molly put her arm around Julia's shoulders. "Believe me, I know. Only time can help. You have to accept everything as it is and try to live. That's the only way, and without any alcohol. It just seems to make you feel better. It really doesn't. It's just a pity I realized it too late, when he'd already made such a mess of things. I'm just realizing it now, too. That's why I'm sitting here getting treatment. I didn't start drinking right away, don't get me wrong. At first, I was just learning on automatic, working part-time, handing out flyers. I tried to get home as late as possible. It turned out that my grandmother bequeathed her half of the apartment. That's why my mother didn't kick me out right away, even though she threatened to when Grandma died. How can you kick out your own daughter? You were only 14, weren't you?" Molly was outraged. "Who was?" Julia continued. Her adventures with men and the bottle moved smoothly into the apartment. "My grandmother was gone, and there was nothing I could do about it, no matter how hard I tried. One day I woke up in fear because someone had kicked the door to my room, breaking the lock on which it was closed. The night visitor turned out to be another of my mother's lovers. He was 40 and I was 15. The forces were unequal. Julia sighed convulsively, reliving those terrible moments again. My God. And your mother? Molly marveled. She was out of it, completely out of it. When the horror was over, he threatened me not to tell anyone. He left the apartment, but I'm not stupid. I called the police right away and told them everything. They told me to lock myself in the apartment and wait for the police and the guardianship authorities. And most importantly, not to take a shower, so as not to wash off the evidence. Only when in half an hour after my call arrived the police and went for the witness's aunt from the guardianship. How to disinvigorate my mother. And you know what she said when she found out? I think I'm guessing I seduced him. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. He went to jail, hopefully for a long time. Molly asked worriedly. Yes, he was tried and put away for a tenor. Nodded Julia. He got the full measure of it, just like the prosecutor said at the trial. My mother was deprived of parental rights, and I was sent to an orphanage, or rather, to a reception center, from where they took me under their wing. After a while, neighbors who knew me and my grandmother well, they are very good people, and really tried to help me. But I never fully recovered from what had happened, and started to drink a little at first, then more and more. You know, your trustees, they didn't try to help you. They did. But I didn't care. I ran away from everywhere they sent me. I ran away from them. And when I turned 18, I went to my apartment where we used to live with my mother and grandmother. It wasn't until I buried her. She died in Juve a couple years ago. I realized what I was doing with my life and what it would eventually lead me to. My former trustees helped me get a job here and are looking after the apartment in my absence. I want to get back to a normal life and go to university. I finished school quite well because I promised my grandmother. Continuing to recall her past life, Julia already shared with Molly only positive emotions, remembers the days spent with her grandmother. All their walks together, sharing their innermost secrets and stories, were held in heart-to-heart talks. It was the best therapy and outlet for them. Soon Molly decided to introduce Michael and Julia. One day, arriving at the treatment center for another meeting with her daughter, Michael learned that the patient was out for a walk on the patio with a patient. With whom? The man was surprised. With a friend of hers. Nervously replied the nurse on duty. They've been friends for a long time. Isn't that dangerous? You don't know anything about your daughter, and you demand something from me, the woman said indignantly. Go to them and see for yourself. All right, grumbled the disgruntled Michael. Can you tell me how to get to the courtyard on the corridor right at the second intersection on the right, and there is a door. Put your visitor's card against the sensor and the lock will open. Relieved, the woman explained. Thank you again, Michael said and headed down the indicated route. Into the inner courtyard of the treatment center. In the open doorway, the man immediately began to look out his daughter. Not far from him on a bench on a lime tree, Molly was sitting with some young and also very pretty girl. Perhaps, thought the surgeon, this is the Julia. Slowly he moved toward the girls. His daughter noticed him as he approached and threw herself at his neck with joy. However, as with every time they met, she couldn't help but be glad that she wasn't alone in the world. Daddy, hi. Molly said nervously. I'm so happy to see you. I've missed you already. I met Julia a while ago and I want you to meet her. You're both so dear to me and I'd like to. Hello, my name is Julia. Interrupted her friend girl. Don't look so unhappy, she smiled at Molly. By the time you finish your monologue, the visiting hours will be up, Michael. Turning to the man, she continued. It's a pleasure to meet you. Molly, she's told me a lot about you. If you'd like to talk to her alone, I can leave so you won't be disturbed. Likewise, Julia. I don't know if I can call you that. I don't have to be called that formally, just Michael. And I'd be very happy to have your daughter and I for company. That's what my grandmother always called me, but you're welcome to call me Michael. I'm Molly's age, so it's a deal. Michael's happy. All right, girls, let's go for a walk. I've never been in this courtyard before. Tell me, where is it and how did you meet? The happy trio spent an hour walking around the small courtyard. The girls told Michael the story of their acquaintance, and Julia told him a little about herself, doubting for a long time whether she should open up to her friend's father, but she felt that this man was a man she could trust. Michael thought about what a strong friendship the girls had formed in such a short time, and he was glad that they had become a real support to each other here. And Molly chatted tirelessly and was glad that her father and Julia had accepted each other into a circle of trusted and close people. Now, whenever Michael visited his daughter, he would either visit the patient himself or make prior arrangements with both of them. He wanted to surround both young girls with care and love to help them cope with their addiction and return to normal life. The man agreed to help with the sale of the apartment in Julia's home country. All this was done on a power of attorney, which she wrote out right in the clinic. The paper was certified by the head doctor, as it should be, and soon things with the purchase and sale wrapped up, spun. Julia was discharged before Molly, and temporarily she settled at the father of her friend, where for several weeks lived happy Alex. Michael secretly from Julia added some money to buy a new home. After all, the proceeds from the sale of her parents' apartment were not enough. He wanted to help her take care of her. He himself did not understand why this girl interested him so much. Alex, his childhood friend, was not allowed, for which he was very worried. Michael, as it was already said, took the boy to himself, but it was necessary to solve something with him more seriously and more officially. At the family council during the next visit, he and his daughter decided that the most correct thing would be to recognize the boy as partially incapacitated and formalize a permanent guardianship over him. The process dragged on. Despite Michael's connections and status, the bureaucratic machine was in no hurry to speed things up. First, there was a social service evaluation to see whether or not the initiators of the case were supportive. Then the court and the forensic examination. And in the court session, Alex himself asked very much to appoint a good doctor as his dad. All the examinations confirmed the conclusion of Surgeon Gould: a medium degree of oligophrenia. This is a small deviation of the psyche, or rather, its development, with which he can quite normally live without isolation from society. The diagnosis is not a verdict. Alex has the opportunity to feel like a full member of society, but since his mental disorders have always caused fear and misunderstanding in people, the young man needs a capable adult who will help him to socialize and be in society without fear and harm to himself and others. The court did not hesitate long and granted Michael's claim. It only remained to wait for the necessary documents from the guardianship authorities. The man became Alexander's official guardian on the eve of his daughter's discharge from the narcological clinic. On the same day, Michael solemnly took his new family to the country house, where by that time made the necessary repairs. For Alex specially built a small guest house, where he could come sometimes to feel in the atmosphere of his childhood. So he wouldn't be bored. Michael had rabbits and a mess of rabbits, the care of which was entrusted to a faithful slayman. "Thank you very much." Admiringly, looking at the farm entrusted to him, thanked Alex. "I'm very fond of all kinds of animals. Can I ask you something else?" "Yes, of course," said Molly's father. "What do you want?" "A dog with glowing eyes," said Alex. "I've always wanted a dog, but I couldn't and I couldn't. And then nowhere." "Let's do this after thinking about it," answered Michael. "If we see a suitable puppy, we'll take it for sure." "I agree. Yes, I agree. Yes," Alex nodded happily. For a few days, Michael watched with great pleasure as his children explored the house and the large plot of land. The entire perimeter was surrounded by large trees that looked like giants with spread fingers. No fruits and vegetables were cultivated here, and the entire space was occupied by a soft, evenly mowed lawn. It was possible to get into the yard of the house by overcoming 2 gate posts and gates made of metal bars, painted in a noble brown color. There were flower beds, and Renato, with admiring eyes, was already looking for a place where she would plant fragrant herbs, as her mother had once done. A precise, winding path led everyone deep into the courtyard, where it led to a beautiful gazebo. There, cushioned seating, a barbecue, a youngster's area, and ornate cozies awaited the new residents of the house, lights burning in the dark. Having completed their survey of the yard, the new residents would head into the house. They were greeted by large motion sensor lights near the front door, making life easier for its occupants. The marble-tiled fireplace shone in the first-floor hallway, sparkling new candlesticks under the bright light of huge glass chandeliers. On the second floor were 4 large bedrooms, and the third floor was occupied by a guest room and a small library. There were also large windows painted with multicolored stained glass. The home office of the master of the house became cozy when the confident hand of his daughter furnished it with bookshelves with professional medical literature. With the help of built-in shelves and bookcases in the room, was enough space for 2 working areas, Michael and his daughter. And in the large kitchen, combined with the dining room, there was a long oval table that could accommodate the whole family and even invite guests. Having completely moved into the country house and making it the main place of residence, father and daughter began to run a common household, and of course, with the involvement of Alexa's tireless help. In the evenings in the living room on the first floor, they often sat together by the fireplace and talked, played, discussed something. Michael and Molly gradually got to know each other, discovering in each other the traits of a newfound relative. Molly, having fully recovered from the accident and got rid of alcohol addiction, recovered at the university, sold her apartment and car to open her own business, namely a psychological support center for people who have lost relatives and found themselves in a difficult situation, and also a store of goods for low-income families with Michael's connections. For the center found very good specialists, doctors, and psychologists. One of the first patients was Julia. She was by then completely cured of alcohol addiction and recovered. Now she was studying with Molly at the psychology department and was trying to work through her childhood traumas, which still did not let her sleep well. Being an incredible beauty, Julia attracted the attention of many young people, and some of her fellow students even proposed marriage to her, but it was as if she didn't notice them. Everyone who saw her at least once was impressed by Julia's slimness and ability to emphasize the advantages of her figure. Often she could be seen wearing a dress or skirt just above the knees. Blouse with a deep neckline and shoes on comfortable heels did not leave indifferent fans of the perfect shape. A face with high graceful cheekbones framing black raven-colored, wing with working dresses. Such a natural shade of hair Julia brightly contrasted with her fair skin on her face. Especially stood out the marvelously beautiful eyes. Those eyes reminded Michael of his dear Miranda. When Julia laughed, her eyes seemed to hide, and in a dreamy mood her eyes became languid and deeper. Julia herself gifts from her many suitors did not accept, reciprocated no one. Rejected admirers even began to spread rumors throughout the university until they received the reprimand from Molly, who protected her friend and helped her to get back on her feet. The thing is, Julia had never planned to fall in love. She had forbidden herself to even think about it until she met Michael. It's wrong. It's wrong. He's my best friend's father, and he's old enough to be my father. More than once or twice. The girl talked herself into it, but her heart told her. Her heart told her that Michael was the one she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. One weekend, Michael decided to take his family to the park. Molly, of course, invited Julia along as well. The huge park complex greeted them with nice weather and few visitors. Peacefully strolling around, among its alleys and buildings. Julia, did you know that this park was visited by the science fiction writer H.G. Wells? Michael asked, walking next to the girl. Molly and Alex ran ahead, seeing something interesting. And it was just the two of them. To be honest, no. The girl answered shyly. He came here in the 4th year and called the park with its monumental architecture, children's and adult rides, free cultural events, and all kinds of exhibitions a factory of happy people. Wow, that's a great reaction from a girl. What else do you know about this park? What is there on its territory now? I'm not a Muscovite. I moved here not so long ago. So I'd love a little tour. Oh, really? I can't be given that kind of leeway. The man laughed. I am a Muscovite to the core. I love our city and know many interesting facts connected with its sites. Ward anyone who is ready to listen to me. I think I am ready, said quietly Julia, and looked directly into Michael's eyes. I think so too. lingering his gaze on the girl, but hesitating to take her hand. Michael started to tell her about the park again. There are several themed areas: festive, historical, and walking. There are also flower beds, gazebos, and fountains at almost every turn. According to statistics, the park is visited by about 100,000 visitors on holidays and weekends. How interesting! Julia stretched out dreamily. I wish I could be here when a crowd of many thousands of people walks here on a holiday. Michael, can we switch to the first name? Go ahead, Julia. I'm happy to do it. Man. All together now. They wandered around the park for a few hours until she started blowing her nose. Then Michael drove Molly and Alex home, and like a gallant gentleman offered to drive Julia too. Standing at the front door, he thought only of how beautiful and young she was. There, Julia, he said aloud. Now I think I'll drive back. All the best to you. Have a good time. Thank you. See you later. She said goodbye to him. He turned around at his car. Julia was still standing in the driveway, looking in his direction with a strange expression in her eyes. He, overcoming the urge to return and embrace her, only waved and drove away. Callan himself for being interested in his daughter's age. Dad, asked Molly's father in some hallway on a sunny day. Can I invite Julia to my birthday sleepover? Yes, of course, Michael said absent-mindedly. However, he imitated this absent-mindedness in order not to show his intense joy at meeting this amazing girl. The party organized in honor of Molly's birthday went great. Everyone congratulated her. Michael ordered a huge cake. They grilled kebabs in the gazebo, and Alex caught crayfish in the nearest pond with his own hand, and solemnly brought to the table a huge dish of river delicious delicacies. Late in the evening, when everyone was already asleep, Michael sat in his office for a long time, tormented by his usual insomnia. Suddenly, a terrible rumble came from below. Concerned, he went down to the dining room and saw that a disconsolate Julia in a nightgown and a thin silk robe with bare feet trying to pick up shards of something glassy from the floor. Julia, my God, why are you doing this? Michael was horrified. You can reach for it. I broke it accidentally. Guiltily, said the crying girl. I think it was confetti. I'm so sorry. She'd forgotten that she and Michael had agreed to call each other on a first-name basis. It's no big deal. It's not even worth one of your tears. Michael was persuasive and came to the rescue. He told them to get out of the danger zone. When the shrapnel was done, he brewed his own coffee and offered to keep her company. The result of these half-night sit-downs was a hot kiss, which was exchanged by the couple in love. Michael could not afford more. He and Julia, having clarified their relationship, decided to immediately inform Molly, so that she did not think that, to the surprise of both of them. She took the news with a laugh. But finally, I thought you guys had been staring forever. Are you going to play? Daughter, how are you? It was all a shocked Michael could manage to say. Well, I'm not blind, Harry the daughter. I saw the way you looked at each other. What do you mean, Julia? She winked at her friend. Now you have every chance of being my stepmother. It was said so comically, and at the same time with such a sincere sense of joy for the father and the friend that everyone who was in the house at that time just rolled with laughter. So much for laughing, Julia said, relieved. Your father has already proposed to me. The wedding took place a month later and was quite modest. And after the registration, the newlyweds and their few guests went to Michael's house, where a feast was organized on such a joyful occasion. On this day, the young drowned in wishes, happiness, love, and health. And 8 months later, they had a beautiful baby boy, who was named Kevin. The boy was born a rich man weighing 4 kilograms 200 grams and 52 centimeters tall. And Molly was in work, which became more and more every day. Her center had a branch, then another and another. She had to transfer to a part-time program to manage the business. But she was doing great. A year after opening, celebrating the first small anniversary of Molly's enterprise, she and her father Julia and Alex were returning home from a presentation of her business. Near the automatic gate, the family suddenly saw a small, shivering chocolate-colored puppy with a white tie on his chest. Dad exclaimed to Alex, "There's my doggy." He came to us by himself, apparently so, Taking the doggy in his arms, the surgeon smiled. "I like this little guy too." He scratched behind the ear of a small fluffy bow. "And what do you say, girls? Great little guy. Let him stay. Julia and Molly have spoken." "Well, so be it," announced the owner of the house and the puppy solemnly. That same evening announced the new members of a large and friendly family. Beforehand, we properly treated them from possible unpleasant surprises. Finally, they were all happy. Each of them found a family. Within these walls, Michael first a daughter, then an adopted son, and then the native Molly, father, girlfriend, and younger brother, as well as faithful Squire Alex, who so now jumped with four-legged baby, as if he himself was only a few years old. But this did not embarrass anyone in the large and friendly family. How not to believe in a miracle, which can so suddenly after so many dull and lonely years knock at your door to say hello? I am already on the doorstep. Thought, smiling and rocking his little son in his arms. A perfectly happy Michael,